Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Mac Manning, and I'm with Military and Veteran Services. I'm here in the Military Community Center in Froggy Bottom campus with myself and Chappie, the facility dog. So unfortunately, you might hear him chewing on a bone. So hopefully he keeps quiet during the rest of this interview. But we have an exciting addition to our Veteran Speaker Series today. As we've discussed in the past, the Veteran Speaker Series is a continuous conversation series with different military-affiliated members of the GW community, covering different topics as they associate with the military-affiliated community in general, ranging from a variety of different topics. My guest today is Shaunda Thompson, who is with the Career Services Office, and she is a career exploration coach. Is that how you say it correctly?
Yes.
So Thank you very much, Shaunda. And one thing that I think is really unique is you have actually a very unique military affiliate background. And if you don't mind for the audience kind of talking to us a little bit about what your military background and military affiliation is.
Yeah. So first, Mac, thank you for having me on your series. Very honored to be here today. So I am an Army veteran. So I served 4 years active duty, and then I have 2 years reserve time. I'm also a military spouse.
Okay.
So my husband was also in the Army. So I know the military from, dependent side as well as actually being a veteran myself.
Yeah, and what we've talked about, I interviewed Rachel Wilcox recently, who is the Pat Tillman Fellow of 2020. She is a veteran dependent, and that's sort of a demographic that we often don't think about when we talk about the military affiliate community. But as Military Veteran Services talks about a lot is, everyone who's a part of that community, we want to be welcoming and holistically inclusive with that. But, they still serve too, regardless of if you were still around. That, even if you weren't even born when your parent was serving, that still had a profound impact on your life. And so we want to make sure we don't forget about that.
Definitely.
If you don't mind, what made you want to decide to join the military in the first place?
Well, I think you're going to get a kick out of this, Max. So what originally made me join the Army in particular is my father is a Marine.
Oh, nice.
And as we know, we have our military community banter where we bash lovingly. We don't want another service. So to spite my father, I joined the Army, which we know Army and Marines are like arch nemesis, lovingly again. So that really is like my joke story, but the real reason why I joined the military is because I wanted my education funded, and I also wanted to travel and see the world. I'm from Central Illinois, from Peoria, Illinois, very small town, and I had never been anywhere. And so I saw the military. I was checking 2 boxes so I could see the world, and I'm also going to learn new experiences. So I believe it was the best decision that I made growing up sheltered in a small Midwestern town.
Sure. And a lot of people have similar experiences in terms of just the opportunities that it's going to have a lot for service to travel. What's funny is my colleague, Colin Markstrom, actually, he joined the military from Washington, and he ended up on a base in Washington. And I myself, I'm from Maryland. I ended up on a base in Maryland. Sometimes you don't get to travel too much, but you do gain a lot of experience, and education is a big factor. We had our 75th anniversary last year of the GI Bill ceremony, and George Washington University was the first institution to use the GI Bill. We're very proud of that. But the Secretary of the VA, Secretary Robert Wilkie, talked about how military has been a gateway or a pathway for individuals to get to the middle class because it does open up that educational opportunity. The idea is that we hope that goes beyond that and more people, there become more opportunities available. But military for a long time has been that because of the GI Bill. And universities play a pivotal role within that. So
I certainly agree. And if I can just add something to your point, the anniversary of the GI Bill, when I saw that, it made me think of my dad, because my father is a Vietnam War veteran. So for him to serve and not, as a veteran, not have the same benefits awarded, and then years later, fast forward, you have a daughter. I'm the youngest of 4 girls.
Wow.
You can now see, your daughter, a veteran too, able to now utilize, some of the benefits. I think that's a beautiful legacy
Sure.
My dad.
Yeah, and I think it probably sets a lot of people up for success.
Yes.
Many times, I think for myself, I can speak, but for a lot of people, it puts them on the right path.
Yes.
When they sort of fall out of line, but for many people, it can just open up so much opportunity, and that's why it's such an important thing for the people that elect to serve. Because not everyone gets that opportunity, but you have to be thankful for the ones that do or elect to do it. It's clear that through education and then honestly having a father, but what has made an impact on you? If you can talk a little bit further, what sort of impact has being a service member or being a veteran had on you, both professionally and personally?
I would say the biggest impact that being a service member has had on me personally and professionally is my level of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So in the military, again, I'm the youngest of four girls. And so I'm the baby of the family. So when I joined the military, that was really my opportunity to really find out who I was and really to see what I was made of. And through different opportunities as well as challenges in the military, I really developed this, I developed into this fearless leader, and it has increased my self-confidence, my self-esteem. So I would say my biggest takeaway personally and professionally from being a part of the military community is a level of self-awareness and confidence that I have, because you all know, you being in a part of the military, we always say if you could survive whatever your branch, you could survive anywhere. And that's the mentality that I have. Like can't is never in my vocabulary.
Well, that's why a lot of companies, they strive to have a veterans hiring initiative. And at the same time, like institutions want to bring in veterans into their as their peers and bring in them as students because they perform at such a very high level and they're very successful because they do have that self-awareness to kind of manage themselves. I know, we talked about setting yourself up or putting you on the right pathway. The skills I gained from the military set me to a pathway of success because of self-awareness that I gained that I wouldn't have gained otherwise being in the service.
Correct. Because in the military, you can't, in the Army, I can just speak for my branch, we say shut up and drive on. Like, know what? Think of a solution and like drive on or suck it up, suck it up and drive on.
Yeah. So, you sort of touched on that you were active duty for a while and then you became a reservist, which is certainly a different transition depending on what you want, because not everyone becomes a reservist. What was your transition out of the military like?
Oh, goodness. My transition out of the Army. Oh, wow. I would say my transition, what I had, the vision of it really didn't match what happened in reality. I'm going to give you a little more detail about it. So I have actually served active duty, we know, but I was also part of the Illinois reserves and then the Illinois National Guard. So who serves all three? Who does that? Of course, I would. So for me, my transition, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Once I separated from the military, I had an idea, kind of explored it, really didn't work out, and that's fine. I really, looking back as a newly separated service member, and then I went right into college. So I separated in August, and we know the fall semester starts in August. I think I had like 2 weeks because we're used to going in the military. I really didn't utilize the services at the institution, like career services, the Office of Military Veteran Services. I didn't fully utilize those services. So I think that would have made my transition a little smoother.
Yeah.
Also, now when I separated, so a lot of things have changed for service members, like the classes you go through and the support and the resources.
Like the TAPs and things like that.
Yeah. That was just kind of hit or miss for me when I was transitioning. But the one good thing that I had going for me is because my father is a Marine, I had some connection to the military community in that my father could then put me in contact with veterans who are in a capacity to kind of help me with the career development and my job search.
Sort of set you up for success from there.
Yes. But I feel, going right from the military and then now you're starting college, and I think I'm kind of jumping ahead. I would encourage student veterans or even dependents, utilize the services at the institution, the military and veteran services offices, as well as the career services office. Resources.
When you're leaving, the military and you're getting out, transitioning out, you're leaving this giant monster that's a support system.
Yes.
And you forget about how much of a support system, regular paychecks, the other people serving with your peers, their families, and then all of a sudden you're on your own, and it's sort of how much do you want to advocate for yourself and reach out, and that's what some people transition with that very well, and some people don't. And it sort of comes with the territory of what school and what kind of setup they have, and we're lucky at GW we have a lot of resources available. But not everyone takes advantage of that. So it's important to recognize, and that's a good piece of advice to tell people, at least explore and find out what's available so that when you need them, you can go to it.
Definitely. Yes.
So Shaunda, if you don't mind, you do work for career services and you do some phenomenal work. And it's really nice to have, it's shocking the amount of military affiliated staff members at the institution at GW. I mean, we are a very big institution. But I think there's like 10,000 staff members in total, something around that range. But there's a lot of veterans that you may not know about. So it's nice as part of the military affiliate community to go to someone and work with someone who might have a lot more experience than they may not realize. Can you talk a little bit about your role at GW and sort of how that works with the veteran organizations?
Yes. So I'm a career exploration coach. So I help first and second year students, but I can serve all students. But I help that particular demographic of students with the what. So what can I do with this major? What do I want to do, with my life? So I really enjoy the exploration part or process because I like helping students. It's almost like a puzzle piece. I like helping students or walk students through the career development process, which is a 4-part process. So I help students with steps 1 and 2. So step 1, know yourself. So what are your skills? What are your strengths? What do you value? And then the second part is, okay, now let's kind of explore majors. Let's explore industries, and let's take this self-knowledge, which I also facilitate assessment. So your Myers-Briggs, your strong interest inventory, your Clifton strengths. How do you take this information from an assessment and then articulate it to the real life and then articulate it to an employer? So I like helping students with the kind of know yourself because it's so important. So I feel a lot of times students want to go to steps 3 and 4 where you're kind of marketing yourself and then now you're working in your field. But wait a minute, your roadmap or your target is those first couple of pieces. You have to know yourself in order to be aligned with what your path is going to be. And I'm very blessed to work with such a great team in career services. We have the industry coaches and our employer development team. And so with veterans, when you're recently separating, and let's just say you're coming back to get your degree, some veterans will stay within their same industry. But even if you're staying in your same industry, it's going to look different on the civilian side. And it's just, I like helping veterans take your military experience and then how are we going to break this down and articulate it to, the civilian industry, the civilian sector, or working with a veteran that is doing something totally different. So my most memorable work with a veteran, I worked with a young man who was an Army Ranger.
Okay.
Separated from the military, and he was in nursing school. I'm seeing the look on your face.
Yeah.
Two totally different worlds, 2 totally different fields, but working with him and working through that imposter syndrome to, okay, what are my transferable skills from a ranger to the nursing profession? Like that, I'll probably never forget that student veteran. And I also like working with dependents because dependents, like you said, I'm glad you said it earlier, they serve too. So having to uproot your life every 4 years and, keeping, things in order and trying to have your own life and your own career. It's the same thing with them. Like, what are my transferable skills and how can I utilize them, when I have to move, so often. So I'm glad that because of my experiences and my background, I could be more empathetic. And I can also serve as a great resource. And I'm proud because, as you know, in the military community, we're always serving. That's what we do. So I feel like this is my way of still serving, even though I'm not, active duty or reserve anymore, but I'm still serving and I'm proud of that.
It's interesting you say that in that, I was taught a while ago when I started working with veterans on a regular basis that being a service member, the reason people say thank you is because it's a form of public service.
Yes.
And your last responsibility as a service member is to assimilate back into the civilian population as best you can. And that's where the role of an institution, obviously the VA has to make, if people have more difficulties, they come in, but the roles of institutions is to give them quality education, using the GI Bill, set them up for pathway to success with career services and career architecture programs. That's what GW is really great at. And sort of, just set them up for success long term. I mean, we talk about the life cycle of a student. It's when they're a prospective student, when they're matriculated, but also seeing them progress beyond the classroom. The raise high aspect is so important with seeing them success, because it's great if they do really well academically at GW, but we want to see them be successful beyond the classroom in their careers. And it's a long-term mission for us. I also want to touch on, you said steps 1 and 2, an average 18, 17 years old, at least in my experience, I probably wouldn't have been as great at identifying the things that I'm really good at. Who am I? But because I had 6 years of military experience, I was probably a lot more cut out to be able to handle that and assess myself to evaluate different careers that I wanted to pursue. So I would think that that does give veterans, we talk about, how do you maximize their experience? I mean, starting with steps 1, that sounds like the key of assessing yourself and finding out what you're good at, and then finding out what you like to do within those skill sets is probably a really great game plan that gives us a distinct advantage as being service members.
Definitely. And as you were talking, it made me think too with any student, but I think particularly it adds an additional layer, for a veteran, it's the identity piece for a veteran to come back. Like you said, we have to assimilate back into society, but particularly in an institution of higher ed, there's that identity piece that they have to kind of navigate and now go through. And I don't think a lot of people are aware. Even veterans themselves are aware of it until I think they're in the midst of the semester. So the identity and the self-awareness, extremely important.
What's funny is when you're in the military, individualism and identity is probably lowest on the totem pole in terms of the value, because that does affect it can affect the mission, or it's not helpful to the mission to be individualistic. It's being a team player and being as part of the engine as possible is probably the most important part for accomplishing the goals. And then when you go off into higher learning, which is such a culture shock, now you're finally able to express your individualism. I mean sometimes it's really easy to get away from your veteran identity, and not especially newer veterans don't want to identify because they've served and they want to move on. Some do really, they can't. They want to hold on. It's a very important piece of identity because everyone's so different, and it's creating that puzzle piece to match and being sort of a chameleon of an institution to give them the experience that they want and sort of the engagement and services that they want to maximize their time when they're here. And that's why different offices like career services, like military veteran services, like multicultural and division and diversity center is so important to their overall experience. So
They all are. They all are. And I like how you said about one of the values of the military. Of course, like you said, it's not focused on the individual, but seeing the moment when you're working with a veteran, but to experience the moment when, I like how you said it, they're a part of something, but to see the moment when a veteran can pick apart or pull apart what their role in this great organization was, when you see that light of self-awareness goes off, like it's wow, it's wonderful, it's a great moment to experience with the student veteran. And like you said, and again, we're all doing our part to assimilate back into the civilian.
And that's a lifelong journey for sure. I think I want to address a little bit of an elephant in the room, in that, obviously we're having this interview, and this was sort of a precursor to a podcast that we were hoping to do one-on-one in terms of like the whole speaker series, but obviously we're doing this via WebEx like everybody else. So COVID is certainly in the mix in terms of how we can help the students and work with the students, and particularly the military affiliate communities pertains to this conversation. So how has your responsibilities, the way you work with students, sort of changed in the new normal of the COVID era?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So when you're working through the career development process, so part of that process, job shadowing, doing informational interviews, it's the most challenging part was or has been getting veterans or students to realize that you can do the same things, but we're going to have to do it in a virtual environment. Sure. So you may not have the job shadowing in person per se, but now we have platforms like Zoom, WebEx, and people initially weren't that comfortable virtually talking, interacting with people. They have to learn how to do that now. And then doing virtual interviews, you have to show up differently virtually. So that's been definitely different. I would also say, because we're virtual right now, really not thinking of everything happens between 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m., like working, in the evening. And being very mindful of, are we being as accessible to the as many demographics of students? Because now that we're virtual, we have students on the West Coast, East Coast, overseas, Midwest. So we're meeting the needs of the diverse demographics of students that we have.
Yeah. One of the other strong supporters of our office before you got here was Marva Grams-Jennings. I've worked with her tremendously. She's phenomenal, and it's wonderful that you guys have you on board now. What I was talking with Marva about is just sort of this COVID era, and the technology side is that we often associate America as like Americans live to work, and then the rest of the world works to live. And the reality is that the new normal, I think it will go back to some things the way we're in this, some things will not. So we're going to continue to invest in people's ability to work distantly with higher technologies. So it's incumbent upon the next generation of students and recent graduates to be prepared for that, to be able to do interviews, to know how to set their camera up, to know how to create a great impression when it comes to lighting, the whole thing, and being confident within those skill sets and practicing those skill sets. Otherwise, they're not going to have an advantage over their peers. When they work so hard to be veterans, or even if they're dependents, they've worked so hard to get their degrees. We want to make sure that in the new world, they're sort of set up. So it's great that we have people like that sort of on board. So I want to transition, because we are coming to the end of our time. If a student was interested in sort of reaching out, regardless if they are a veteran, a dependent, or even just a general student body, what would be the best approach for them to start reaching out to career services, and particularly to work with your office?
Yes, thank you. That's another great question. So they can schedule an appointment on Handshakes or Exploration appointments. So if they're not familiar with Handshake, which is something that we can assist a student with, they can just send an email to the career services. If they go on our website, and the general email, like, hey, I don't know anything about Handshake, I need help, and we'll get it to the appropriate coach.
Great. Sounds simple enough, and I guess at that point you guys will start working with them from the beginning. What point you talked about it that you worked with first and second years. So you recommend that as soon as they come to the institution, they should make an appointment, start working with career services? Because I would think to set them up for success, they would want to work all 4 years. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more because it's never too early. I had said it earlier. A lot of students miss or they don't realize until it's too late sometimes the importance of the know yourself piece. Because that, if you get that down, that guides you. That's your compass into your next steps. And so where a lot of students find tension is they don't have the answers
Yeah.
to who they are. So yes, as soon as they're whether they're a transfer student or they're going to be a first year student, highly recommend that they start working with us as soon as possible.
I think the worst case scenario is, you work your butt off to graduate, and then you graduate and you look left and look right. So what jobs are available? And I think that it's really tough to go back and take advantage of those resources once you've left GW or you're not as affiliated, because it just takes a long time. I think they say it takes between 3 and 6 months to get a job, but that was in the in-person world, and I would imagine that has changed, and we will learn more about that in many years to come. So it is something that you should be focusing on, because your success rate is obviously your time at GW, but it goes beyond that. Again, our goal is to help you get to that point where you find you're successful beyond the classroom when you're a well-established alumni.
So. Definitely. And we help alumni too. So just because you've graduated from GW, I mean, you could still have access to us. So we, work with lots of alumni. Or I don't want students to think like, oh, I'm a junior or a senior. I don't really know who I need to talk to. I can certainly, work with them, as well to kind of figure out an action plan. But we're definitely here to support our alumni. I don't care if they've graduated 20 years ago from GW. You're part of the GW family. So
what it sounds like is like there's never a bad time to start, but you want to start as early as possible.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shaunda. I really appreciate you spending the time. This has been great. Hopefully, I think we should schedule another conversation in a couple months. Just kind of revisit this and see where we stand in terms of this new world, and see where things are in terms of best practices for career services or looking for jobs. And it'd be really interesting to see. I think it's really exciting in terms of the advancements of technology. You talked about like people weren't that comfortable. I remember Skype was a big thing when I was in college, and you would do it to call your parents from time to time or see. And now it's like everything I do is in a virtual digital setting. So we really have come a long way. But again, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me on behalf of Military and Veteran Services and the Office of Career Services and the GW community. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is our Veteran Speaker Series. If anybody is interested in learning more about this series, feel free to contact the Office of Military and Veteran Services at vetserv@gwu.edu. We will be conducting these interviews and posting these interviews through the month of November, which is our official Veterans Month. But we are hoping to continue this series for many months to come, as the conversation has been phenomenal. So if you'd like to participate in one, or you think someone would be a really interesting person for us to contact to be a part of this, feel free to reach out to our office. On behalf of Military Veteran Services, my name is Mac Manning, Program Manager. Thank you very much. Signing out.